I'll be back around like 6:30, so if anybody wants like pictures or autographs, I will be back for sure. I'm not running away, I'm going to come back.
Okay, thank you.
I'll go watch you.
Sign the contract.
Hi fellas, I'm Steve Wood from Manchester, UK. I'm just going to ask both of you, what's your favourite LP and why?
Heep album or any album?
Yeah, Heepaholic.
Heep album. Sorry, it's a stupid question.
Broad in the scope.
For me, it has to be Firefly.
Yeah.
For the principal reason that it was the first album that I sang on with the band. The songs themselves had a particular magic to them, each one, somewhere. Especially Firefly. It's a song which we did on the Firefly tour, and it always got to me every time we did it. For some reason, I don't know why, it just got to me. Wise Man was just something else. It's a singer's song. I said that yesterday. If you're a singer, and the song comes along, and they come along every now and again, it's just a song which you can't help getting into. And I said this yesterday about this song from Ken's album Winds of Glory. It's just a song that, and I knew straight away when we were putting the set together that we did yesterday that I wanted to do that song. So in answer to that question, Firefly has to be my favourite album, I have to say.
Like, you gotta have the singer, doesn't it? It's okay, one thing to have the song, you gotta have the singer. You can be as modest as you want. I think my favourite album with John was Innocent Victim. I agree. I think Firefly was cool. I thought Fallen Angel was cool. I mean, we did a lot of great albums. We had a lot of lousy album covers, but we put a lot of great albums together. And but I've got to go back and say, from two standpoints. Musically, I think for me it's split between Demons and Wizards and High and Mighty. I thought High and Mighty was probably the most fun. It was just like doing a solo album with the band. And I think some of my best songs were on that record. Weep in Silence is still one of my favourite songs. A good song I'm going to do on tour next year. But I think that every album was a step forward. It was a step in a different direction. So it's hard for me to pick. But I'd say Demons and Wizards, High and Mighty, and definitely Firefly.
Okay. I think we've just got time for two more questions, very quick ones, okay? Now, you described what had happened over the last few hours. Yeah. I think Lannis deserves one.
He deserves it.
Yeah. I thought you two guys are going to get together and collaborate and get us a good CD.
So with them,
Hey, I got nothing.
Can you translate that?
Pretty good. You still have some talent, so that's good.
you know what, Lannis, I've got to tell you one thing. I insist that it's okay to get older, but I will never get old. The chief reason I'll never get old is because I'll never grow up. Right? But the one thing I hate about getting older is the word still. You still look pretty good. You still have all your hair, of course it's a different colour. You still get around pretty well. No, I'm just kidding. That word still drives me up the wall. But hey, I mean, this has been the most fun for me I've had in a long time. Yeah. Rehearsing for 3 days, killing my fingers, getting blisters on my bum, and everything else. It's been, and doing the show last night was something I'll never forget. It was a great time, and I could.
Although we had the 3 days of rehearsals together, I had never met Paul Newton before.
That's right.
And Paul, he just pulled the whole thing together over the 3 days, and I've got to thank him for that. there are a few people who actually missed it. The fact that Reuben and Justin actually managed to get this thing together in 3 days from nothing. We had a background with this stuff. Reuben and Justin didn't have any background to this stuff. They went in there and they worked really, really hard. And I can't say it enough, these guys have got talent and it has not been shown enough. And Reuben is only 26. He's got so many years in front of him and he's just going to get better and better.
We should go out on the road and open for Uriah Heep.
And I'm going to kill this by saying that the day prior to the rehearsals, Ken and I met up privately, and it was just as if we'd been away for a weekend. So we got back together, and it's an absolute joy to work with this man. He writes some of the best songs that you could ever want to sing, and that's the biggest compliment you can pay to somebody. They write songs that you want to sing. If you're a singer, you know what I mean.
Yeah. We'll see that.
That seems like a good point to break, but I had promised a guy behind me just one question, so this is the last question. He's got a nickname that suits us all, I think, but it's his. Here you go, Heepaholic.
Hi, this is a question for Ken. Could you tell us some more about the recording you did during the High Mighty sessions? All the weird stuff you did?
Oh, well, yeah.
Thinking especially about Woman of the World, the hidden lyrics.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Perhaps we should have drawn it closer.
I'm not afraid of the truth.
That's fine.
Yeah, well, the other guys in the band came up with the idea to do those hidden lyrics, so it was nothing to do with me.
She kicked off the rest of it.
Well, actually, what it was, David decided that the reason why our record sales were going downhill was because of Jerry's producing, which was actually not true, but and so he decided that we should fire Jerry as our producer and that the band should produce the album, which essentially meant that I would do it because nobody else really had any experience of doing that. And also nobody had any songs either. So basically we created a situation in the studio where we just took a bunch of songs and we had a lot of fun recording them. And John Wetton was very heavily involved in this because John is a great arranger. People know him as a bass player or as a singer or whatever, but he's a great arranger. He has great ideas for arrangements. Many of the arrangements on High and Mighty came from John's ideas, but we had the freedom to experiment again. There was no one in the control room saying we need another Gypsy, we need another Easy Living, we need another Lady in Black, we need this, we need that, which is what the industry is fond of doing. They like to take away your experimentation and make you do things a certain way. So now all of a sudden we had the freedom to do crazy stuff. And we had David singing into the strings of a piano, we had him singing through tom-toms, going into the reverb vault chamber and singing in there, and just, I mean, all kinds of insane things were going on, just because we could. And some of it we used, and some of it we just laughed at and we didn't use. Actually, I have a funny story. I want to finish with a funny story. Remind me about a Christmas party. But, so the deal was that we just decided to do all these. I mean, I played pedal steel at the beginning of Weep in Silence. It sounds like I know what I'm doing. It actually took 4 days to do that intro, because I don't have a clue how to play pedal steel guitar. We just sat down and I fiddled with it until I got something that sounded right. But we did this because we could. And so it was really just, literally, for me, like making a solo album. I produced it, I wrote all the songs, and just we did all this not-so stuff. Of course, Jerry hated it, that's why the album was buried. It never was promoted, and so on. But in that one song, in Woman of the World, we just got very rebellious one night and got a little bit drunk, and we decided we were going to make some little statements in this song, and we just made some comments about contracts and managers and things like that. And, you know, just like in the beginning of I Can't Stop Singing. You know, we go into the studio for some reason or other. No one, even us. We start singing "Load of Laughs in Africa." Now, it doesn't mean anything. It has no significance at all. But we just thought it was hilariously funny, so we decided to leave it on the record. And you can stick your contract right up your whatever. That's just a statement of rebellion. That's all. And we did it because we could. That's all. It was a fun album to make. I love listening to it even today. And I wouldn't have done that album any differently. It just was a very un-Uriah Heep album. It wasn't what anybody expected, and so therefore it didn't fit into that pigeonhole. So it was a buried record, but I think it was a buried treasure in my opinion. And my funny story is, just to finish this, I'm sorry, but I can never think of funny stories because there were so many of them, and most of them involved Gary Thane. But Gary was an incredibly funny guy, totally fearless. But one year, we had a Christmas party in the studio, in the Bronze studio. It was the year after I left the band. I was still on fairly friendly terms with everybody. And we had a Christmas party, and at some point, the party went down into the studio at the bottom, in the basement of the building on Chalk Farm Road. And we went in there, and there was hundreds of musicians hanging out, and they decided to go into the studio and jam. And I, at the time, was not drinking or anything. I was trying really hard to clean my life up, so I was Mr. Boring. So I sat in the control room with John Gallen, the engineer, and all these musicians were down in the studio trying to make various instruments work. And we were up there. We're going to record this entire event. So we're trying to get sounds for everybody. And Lemmy from Motorhead was down there, and a couple of the girls from Girls' School were down there, and Mick and Lee, I think, was down there. And we got the drums sounding good, and we got a couple other things sounding good, but we couldn't get a bass sound, we couldn't get a guitar sound. We had no idea why. And Mick's down there and he's playing away and nothing's coming out the amp. And Lemmy's down there playing bass and nothing's coming out the amp. And we're pushing all the faders and plugging everything in and trying to figure out what's wrong. So John finally said, you know, I'm going to go down there and find out what's wrong. So he went down into the studio, and there's all this noise in there because everybody else is jamming. So he goes over to Lemmy, and he picks up Lemmy's guitar cord, and he picks it up and he starts walking along like this, and Lemmy was plugged into Mick. He thought it was plugged into an amplifier, plugged into himself. Needless to say, that was the best. But that's
Oh, what a way to end. Listen, guys. John